Have you noticed that the parents' choice in education trend is picking up steam? So have I. In fact, I've kind of been part of it. My name is Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting, good communication, how to build strong family relationships all over the world through the lens of the principle self-government. But I also am very heavily involved in the education world, speak at education conferences, especially homeschooling conferences all over the world, and have done so for many, many years because I homeschooled all of my children into adulthood. So let's talk about what's going on in this parents' choice in education movement. In this video, we're going to be talking about the parents' choice in education movement, the little bit of the history of it, and what parents are hoping to gain as they start to open the door for more choices in education. Did you know that this year, which when I'm filming this video, the year is 2023, in the United States, there are multiple states that already have bills in place for what they call parents' choice in education, which means that they are allowing parents to utilize money that normally would go into the public school funds to fund other forms of education, such as private schools or different tutoring services, maybe even homeschool options, supplies that they might need there. So they are allocating money at this rapid rate toward parents being able to choose what they want to do in education. This is kind of shocking, especially because some people are like, whoa, that's like taxpayer money. Is that okay? Well, they all pay taxes, so I guess it is. But what could happen there? Are there risks to that? Well, in years past, I was a big advocate for saying, yes, there are big risks for that. This year, in 2023, 21 states, there might be more for all I know now, but as of a couple of months ago, 21 states in the United States were bringing up bills in their state legislature for parents' choice in education. These bills would create education savings accounts for children. They would do something called backpack funding. So backpack funding is when a person gets their money from education from the government that they've paid in, because everyone's paying in for all the children, and they say, I have this child and I want to take their funds that would normally go toward that school, but I want to use it toward this tutor, this program, this private school, whatever it is. I want to use it in those ways. Now, as a homeschooler, a person who's homeschooled my children all the way. So my foster children were not homeschooled. They were publicly educated, but my 4 children were homeschooled the entirety of their schooling. So I've had both. And my father is a public school teacher, okay, at a high school. He also was a university professor. So education has sort of like been one of the main pieces of my life. Anyway, so those children of mine that were homeschooled, I felt like I don't ever want any government anything. I don't want government money. I don't want government kickbacks ever from any of that. And in fact, I probably have videos on this channel where I've even mentioned such because I've had concerns about the parents' choice movement. And I actually still do have concerns about the parents' choice movement. So the parents' choice movement is a freedom-based movement. It was started back in the homeschool years. And I have another video on this channel you may want to look at if you want to hear some of the history of homeschooling. That video is called Why Are Homeschooling Numbers Rising? So be sure to check that out if you're interested in that. So homeschooling is a freedom movement, okay? And I've loved that, been part of it, felt like it was the best for my family, but never wanted any government money back because I didn't want government restrictions, or I didn't want to have to be forced to test my children, as some other states I know or countries have done to people who choose to home educate. So I would push off and push off. But then the movement for parents' choice came on the scene, and people started saying we need to get this money back to the parents for the children because we're taking the money out of taxes and it isn't right. And I said to myself, well, that's actually true, but I still don't want your money because I'm afraid of what you could try to do to me if suddenly we take the money. So I pushed back and pushed back, even even all the way up until last year, I pushed back, especially because a lot of those parents' choice bills that were coming out were actually bills that would call for different assessments and stuff like that. And I wasn't okay with that, because if a parent truly has choice in education, the parent is driving, and there shouldn't be that oversight, and you shouldn't be getting into people's homes and into their lives. And so I still was a little worried, because this basically freedom movement had been co-opted into what could turn into a control movement in my mind. Well, I recognized after talking to legislators many times that this movement was going, because parents have an appetite for it. After the COVID pandemic, people are saying, listen, that normal just homeschool box doesn't necessarily fit me, but the public school doesn't fit me either. And so I think I want to have a hybrid of this and this, or I want to try tutoring in this way, or I want options, lots of different options. And I need to figure out how to get the options for my child since I'm paying. And so lawmakers are like, we have heard loud and clear, this is what we need. There was this huge movement across the nation that they were going to try in these states to get that in place in the states. In my state, I recognized they were going to pass this, and I wasn't going to be able to stop it. And so since I had concerns, I thought, well, I better consult on some of the language for that legislation that originally goes in, so that we've got something that can protect families' rights and parents and help with what the goal is for the children. So as I got into that process of writing and editing and working with the legislators, we ended up turning out something that people started heralding as, wow, that's the best we've seen. And I'm hoping it will pick up in other states, and I'm hoping it won't get corrupted too, because legislation can get corrupted. But I saw they were going to pass it, and sure enough, it was overwhelmingly passed. I mean, with a super majority. No one could do a referendum. There was nothing anyone could do to stop it. And so I was glad that I was part of it. But more and more, as I started getting into it and recognizing the different voices who were coming to the table, I did recognize that everyone was truly trying to do what was best for the families, what the parents needed for their children and wanted for their children, and what the children needed. So I do see this parents' choice movement as a very positive thing that could positively impact our nation and families, relationships, specifically in families, because now parents are going to be empowered. In fact, in Arizona, they called their bill the Parents Empowerment Bill, because they want parents to be empowered. And when parents are empowered, they make more deliberate decisions for their children. They don't just go with the status quo. They talk to their children about their education more. They see what the child needs a little bit more. That's true empowerment in education. So the movement actually turns out to be, I think, a very positive movement, so long as we can keep it from getting corrupted by, keeping data collection out of it, keeping assessments out of it, and all the requirements out of it for the families. But if we can keep it true to what it should be, then all the better. And in my state, I live in Utah, we ended up creating something. At least at the beginning, I'm going to say I'm proud of it. If it changes in a few years and you find problems, or even next year, because that can always happen, just so you know, I'm going to keep trying to keep it good, like it is as it went in. This parents' choice movement is truly changing the face of education, not just across our nation, but it's changing people's view of education across the world. Before I move on to the next point, click that subscribe button now. That little button gives you access to so much more content just like this on this channel. So what's happening in the world? There is a global transformation that is happening. So I speak about parenting all over the world. I've been to many countries now who do not have any homeschooling or options in education outside of private or public choices. And some places only having public choices. Well, As I have met with families the last few years, as this parents' choice in education movement has been bubbling up and increasing in steam across the United States and starting to spread outside into other places in the world, I have noticed that some of these countries are getting brave and standing up. For instance, just a couple of years ago, when I was in Kenya talking to leaders there, even academic leaders, people who were running Ivy League universities, many of their college professors were pulling their own children out of public schools and starting a movement for homeschooling in their country. Just a few short years ago, that was happening because of this momentum that is building. Just this year, I've met with people in other countries, in New Zealand, where people are going, you know what? I think I want to try this homeschooling. Looks hard, Nicholeen, but I see where there could be possible benefits. And so I think I'm going to give it a try. And so they are stepping into uncharted waters where they live, doing something that nobody has done in their communities before, and they are starting to grow. Their freedom will start to grow too if they can maintain the focus on their families instead of being overwhelmed by the to-do list, because that is the downfall that many homeschoolers fall into, is they try to compare what they're doing to what happens on an assembly line at a public school or even a private school assembly line, as far as like inserting the information for the children, and they start to try to do school at home the way they do it in a different facility or institution. But homeschooling should feel a little bit different. It should feel like family life. It should feel like conversations and bondings and stories and games and making goals and accomplishing goals. It should feel like regular families growing and doing things together. Keep that in mind, all of you that are starting to branch out and do homeschooling in your lands where it has not been done very much before. In fact, homeschooling has debuted in even places like Budapest, Hungary. When I was there, speaking at a congress, a world congress that was there, they had people speaking about homeschooling as this new idea, coming into Russia, coming into all these different places where you wouldn't think that it would happen. So it's hitting the world because everybody is saying, yes, parents need to have that choice. And the trend is on the move for parents to be more in the driver's seat on their children's education. Now, in order to maintain that driver's seat and to really have that good bond and connection that happens in education, you do need to have a good relationship with your children. And that's where the bulk of this channel actually comes in. So on this channel, I talk all about self-government, the principles of self-government, and how a person can learn to master themselves, and how parents can teach their children self-government. This improves family bonds and relationships. It helps the home be heart-driven instead of power-driven, which is huge. Be sure to get the help that you need for your family. If you're going to go down that road of parents' choice, make sure that while you're on that journey, that you spend some time focusing on the relationships that you're developing in that family, because that's what's going to make that parent choice in education really open the door to the conversation and excelling and helping the child feel empowered in all of their areas of life. Because guess what? Education is one big whole. Education is not just reading, writing, and arithmetic. Education is everything. Everything we learn. That's why YouTube's successful, because it's all education. Either for the good or for the bad. Well, I suppose there's time wasting that happens on here too. But this place proves that we constantly are craving more. So why not give our children more than just reading, writing, arithmetic? How about we give them all the tools that they need for life, starting with the number one truth, which is I can control myself. I can govern myself and take responsibility for myself so that I can be the best version of me. A person that has that truth ends up powerful beyond measure. please click on the resources below this video. There's a link to teachingselfgovernment.com. That's my website. There's a link to a Calm Parenting Toolkit, and you can have it for free. It's a 10-lesson mini course to start you on your track to self-government. There are so many resources, books, and tools that you can find. But also, if you're looking for help in your own choice in education, there's a site called heartofhomeschool.net. Even if you don't homeschool, the principles presented there will help you as you're pondering the education for your children. And I have a new website that's going to be coming out soon, so come back and see when that hits the resources. That will be specifically designed to help parents who are wanting more choice in education navigate this space and help you feel empowered as you're making decisions for your family. Click on some of those links now. Get the help you need. I'll see you there.